Greetings, everybody, and welcome to our first edition of Ask an Ambassador from the College of Engineering at the University of Texas at Arlington. We're super excited to have all of you be present here today. We're going to start with a few introductions. My name is Lynn Larson. I'm Director of Student Recruitment for the College of Engineering, and so I help develop schedules to come and visit you either live or virtually obviously this fall. We're also available throughout the day through Teams and through our phones in our offices, but we just thought it would be a really interesting thing to have an Ask an Ambassador session. We do have engineering student ambassadors that also meet with students, both new students and prospective students and counselors and parents. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce our fabulous student ambassadors. And ladies and gentlemen, we will go Ishrat, Zara, Yuan. So in that order, would you please explain to us, give us your name, give us your class ranking, give us any information about, what you're studying, when you expect to graduate, and we'll go from there. So Ishrat, you're up first.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ishra. I'm currently a master's student in the biomedical engineering department, and I will hopefully be graduating this December.
And would you share with us what your undergraduate degree was in?
Yes, they were in electrical engineering and math.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Zara.
Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zara, and I'm currently an architectural engineering major. I'm currently a senior and will hopefully graduate May 2021.
Great, that's fabulous. Thank you, Zara. All right, Yuan, you are next. Wait for the little live button to come on. There you go.
Okay. Hi guys, my name is Yuan and I am majoring in civil engineering, and this is my senior year right now, and hopefully I will graduate in May of next year.
Oh, hopefully. Come on, you guys. You've got it together. You're going to graduate. I just know you are. So this session is about how to best prepare to be successful in engineering at UTA. So I have a couple of questions to get us started. For those of you listening in on this, if you would like to type your questions in the Q&A box. The Q&A box is the one that has like the little talking things with the big question mark in the middle of it. On my screen, it's showing up next to my hang up icon. So if you want to use that and ask your questions, then they will be fed and we will be able to look at them and answer them accordingly. But to get this conversation started, I want to ask, what habits from high school helped you prepare for college? So I know for, your seniors now, you have to think back a little bit, right? So what habits from high school did you develop, or what habits helped you prepare you for college? So Ishrat, we're going to go with you first.
So I would definitely say I did a lot of sports and other activities in high school. So time management really helped, and coordinating my time and making sure I gave the right amount of time to everything helped with like classes and making sure that, I studied my calculus and I made time for that calculus because it was a difficult and challenging class. And so I would say time management is one of the main things that I learned from high school that has helped me in my transition to college and grad school.
Great. Zara, I know you have to head off to class in a little bit, so you're next.
So high school, well, now that I think about it, I'd say that just getting into my study habits. So I did the IB diploma program, which is the International Baccalaureate Diploma, which is also a very intensive, rigorous program. So I think that kind of helped me prepare for college because we've had a lot of projects and homeworks thrown at us, which is like a regular high school student, especially if it's your senior year in high school. So I mean, just getting into the habit, the one thing that I really did focus on was having like a calendar and putting in all my events, homeworks, projects that were due on there. So it would kind of help me keep on track and not waste time.
Yeah, that's great. That's fabulous. That's really good information. Yuan.
Oh, there we go. Still new to this, sorry. For me, in high school, or what I did a lot was sports. I did track and field. I think that, well, I didn't do college sport after I graduate, but it did really help me develop the ability to work with other people, ability to work as a team, and that's pretty important when you're an engineering student. Oftentimes, you'll be working a lot of people on projects, whether it's engineering courses or just regular your core classes. And also on top of that, I did take some like intro engineering courses in high school, and those kind of paved the way for me to understand like how different engineering professions work in the real world and how that goes well. And but here's one advice I would say to any high school students is that if I had the ability to go back in high school, I would take as much AP classes as I could because I came in with no AP credits, and I was kind of forced to take about 18 credit hours from ever since like sophomore year just to finish my degree in 4 years.
Wow, and that's hard. 18 units is really a lot of time. You know, that's hard. That's really hard. So I hear you talk a lot about, you know, being involved in things that weren't necessarily academic, you know, sports and still keeping up with your academics, which means that you must really have been able to manage your time, right? So can you give us some hints on how you managed to do that? Did you do it just on your phone or an old-fashioned wall calendar or a planner or Post-it notes? Just how did you manage your time? And how did you think about managing your time? Like what other things did you put in those calendars to help keep you on track so you could do your sports or do your projects and still have time for family and homework? So Ishrat, you get to go first, my friend.
So I use my phone a lot for sure. Whatever event or anything I had going, I would set an alarm for 30 minutes before it actually occurred. And I would also, as Zara said, I had a really nice planner and I had like a bunch of different colored pens. And so I would write everything down so that I had like an alarm for it and I could also visually see how my day was going to go.
Oh, that's great. So you're like a visual planner, not just electronic, but visual as well. Great. That's fabulous. Zara, what about you?
I wouldn't say I'm a visual planner. I'd say I'm more of like an electronic planner. I know that I'm going to have my phone with me at all times, no matter where I am, where I go, I'm going to have it with me. So what I do is I use the Apple Calendar on my phone. Also, sometimes I do use the Google Calendar, but what I do is every Sunday, I make sure I look at all the stuff that I have going on during the week, just to kind of like, you know, have it at the back of my mind. Okay, so this is what's going to happen during this week. And I set reminders like every 2 hours, 3 hours before the event's going to start, or like before it's a homework or a project is due. And so that's how I help keep on track and, you know, not lose focus.
Oh, that's great. That's really, really helpful. So Yuan, how do you keep track of your time? What tools do you find helpful?
For me, I'm pretty basic compared to Ishra and Zara. I just use sticky notes really and the calendar Outlook because those are automatically added to my calendar whenever there's something for work or professors post something. And also there's a calendar on Canvas. You guys can go up and look. It's really helpful because often Canvas will post due dates on assignments and tests on their own calendar. But yeah, besides that, I just write down what I need to do throughout like in the next 3 days on a sticky note and just slap it on my monitor or my laptop, just so every time I see it, just open it up. It works.
So since you use so many sticky notes, do you have different colored sticky notes for different subjects or classes, or you just use one color until that color's gone and you use another one?
I've been using like the same color ever since freshman year, and I just use different color pens.
Well, that's creative, right? That's really creative.
Yuan's pretty simple.
That's great. So one of the things that's really important as a student is, you know, being able to study and being able to listen to a professor and take notes of some kind so you can go back and review them later when you're trying to do a project or homework or, you know, anything like that. So how do you take notes? Do you use pen and paper, pencil and paper? Do you do them electronically? Like, what kinds of things did you learn in high school to take notes better that you still use today as a current UTA student? So again, we'll do Ishrat, Zara, Yuan.
So when I was in high school, yeah, I did the traditional pen and paper, and in college I still do. But when I'm in class, I do my Apple iPad Pro and my Apple Pencil. There's an app that I use called GoodNotes and Notability, and so with those two apps, I can actually record the lecture into my notes, and so that way, sometimes if I miss anything, I can repeat what the lecturer said and then just go from there. And so now, and after that, I will take notes on a piece of paper, like make my study guide on a piece of paper so that I have, like that muscle memory and I can, review the information and get it down.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's great. Zara, sorry, what do you got for us?
So I'd say that if it's a class, let's say if it's English or history or political science, something that involves a lot of reading, what I would do is I'd use my laptop and I'd put in bullet points whenever the professor would be going through the lecture in class. I just make short bullet points and you basically summarize the whole lecture for myself. But when it comes to the engineering courses, one where there's a lot of drawing involved as an architectural engineer, or there's a lot of math and physics going on, I do the old-fashioned, I use my paper and pen to draw stuff, and it kind of helps me understand better.
That's great. So kind of more visual learner, not just auditory learner. You have to kind of look at it to make it make sense.
I have to look at it to understand. I can't just make bullet points and because those diagrams really do help, and I have to draw them for myself.
Oh, that's great. Yuan, what about you?
For me, high school and college was a lot different, because back in high school, teachers, for me, they were okay pace. Like I could take notes with a pencil and just like a notebook in class, I'd be fine with it. But as soon as I reached the college, I found that it was hard to keep up with professors often in classes. So what I did is that I would go on to Echo 360, it's a feature at UTA that usually records most of the lectures that professors do, and you could just go back and watch it like a video. So I would do that. I would like maybe every Saturday, Sunday, or usually so on the weekends, I would go back to those videos and write down any notes I miss, or sometimes, actually most of the times, I don't even take notes at class. I just listen, and then I would go back and take notes. Or the other way around, it was how I would get the textbook and just use the textbook for my notes, because often I've found that the authors actually summarizes the content pretty well.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. So you each have your own way of doing it, which is great, right? Really fabulous. When I was in high school, I was trying to learn Japanese, and so I'd take a piece of paper and fold it 3 ways. So I'd have a vocabulary word in English, and then I'd have it in the kanji, the characters, and then I'd have it spelled out like using hiragana, which is like the syllabic spelling, the A-I-M-E-M-A-S-H-E. So then I would just go back and forth and do it that way to learn both the characters and the meaning of the word. So very different ways of doing things, but really super exciting. So the next question I have has to do with math, because we all know that math is at the core of engineering, right? And so were there any limitations from high school in the math that you learned and adjusting to UTA? And then as a secondary question, why is it important to learn higher math in college? Maybe you've taken calculus or IB higher math or A-level math or something like that in high school. So why is it important to go to that next level in that same sort of math area? Does that make sense? You guys got that? So limitations in high school, and why is higher math so important in engineering? Ishrat, you are up.
All right. So in high school, the highest math I took was Calculus BC. And so, and think of how to best word my answer. But to be honest, I didn't feel like it was a limitation, because like with calculus, we started off right in the engineering department in electrical, we start off with Calculus 1. And so I felt like I was in like right where I should be. And it really, I had a terrific high school math teacher, and he taught us super duper well. And I think he prepared me very well for college calculus and what all it entails. And as far as like why the higher math is important, well, so a lot of I mean, like everybody has an iPhone, right? Well, how does the circuit in this iPhone work? It's due to the differential equations and, you know, the numerical, it's due to that time. And so, you know, if we want more and more like cooler and more progressive technology, having people who know this like upper level math and who are good at it and can apply it, I think that's a reason, you know.
Right. So how many of you guys have seen the movie Hidden Figures? You know, where the woman is doing all of the math calculations on the big, you know, chalkboard, right? Math is important because that's what got us to the moon, right? And that was before computers. So math is important, right? Okay, Zara, what do you have for us?
So back in IB, I took math higher level for 1 whole year. That was a big mistake because honestly, even my own teacher back then told me that if you're not planning on doing math, like math as in math, you're not planning on being a math major in university, you don't have to take math higher level. So I changed it back to math standard level. It did help quite a bit, but not a lot, honestly. I also took math in community colleges, and then comparing that to the math courses at UTA, I'd say they weren't as difficult because coming into UTA, I took Calculus 1 and I realized that I needed to put in a lot more time into it, work much more harder because we also have calculus labs for Cal 1, Cal 2. We also have labs where we do a lot of practice questions with our TAs, but definitely math at UTA is not that easy. I'm not trying to scare you or anything, but I just say that you have to dedicate a certain amount of time for your math courses. Let's say if it's like a 4 credit hour class, you definitely have to put in like at least 16 hours outside of classroom the week minimum is what I'd say. But yeah, the math courses aren't that easy at UTA. You would have to dedicate time and, you know, organize your planner according to it.
Right. Okay, Yuan, what about you in math?
Me and math, for me, I'm not a big fan of math, to be honest. I struggled through Calc 1 and 2 when I first entered college and didn't take any AP calculus back in high school. But back in high school, I didn't really realize what was the limitation to high school math, mainly algebra up until pre-calc, which you don't touch the basics of derivatives or theories of infinity. And once I reached college, I realized how important that it is to use derivatives and integrals, basic calculus. And that, first of all, it showed up in some of my college level physics courses, where back in high school, all we had to learn was Newton's second law, F equals to ma. And the teacher will give you all the kinematic equations you need. But by the time you're in college, you're expected to derive all the kinematic equations based on just F equals ma, and you will have to use differential equations for that. And if you're like a aerospace or mechanical engineer, you will probably need to understand a lot of integrals and up to differential equations, some linear algebra, to do your fluid mechanics, especially when you calculate energy transfer, like on Bernoulli's principles.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So when I was a college student many years ago, there were very few engineering courses available to students. There was like electrical and mechanical, and that was about it. And in my dorm, there's a whole group of students who were all math students. You know, that was their thing, and I'd sit in on their conversations, and I had no idea what they were talking about. Absolutely none. They were talking about linear algebra and differential equations and all this kind of stuff. But two of the people there ended up working for Adobe and for Google based upon their math experience, because if you think back, computer science and some of the other engineering areas were not even a blip on the radar back when I was in college. So math is really the foundation of everything, which I think is super important for students to understand. So that was kind of eye-opening to me, especially now working with engineering students at UTA. So here's the next question, and then we'll get to the question that Ishrat answered for the student. How did you cope with the transition from high school to college during your freshman year? How did you cope? What did you do to kind of make that transition easier? So Ishrat, we'll start with you. Zara, are you okay on time or?
Yeah, I'm fine. I can still, I can answer this question and then leave.
Yeah, Zara
Okay.
can answer it.
Okay.
And then
Go ahead, Ishrat, you're up.
Oh, okay. So I just spent a lot of time alone in the library with my syllabuses and my calendar and making sure, like, I had all the right test dates, and then organizing my notes and reviewing my notes because I know myself and I know I'm easily distractible, and I knew if I found I would not have been successful. So yeah, when I transitioned from high school, I would go to class, take my notes, go to the library, go to the quiet floor, sit in a cubicle, and just force myself to review my notes and get everything done so I would stay on top of it. Because once you get behind on schoolwork, it's kind of like it builds up and then it's kind of like, that downhill slide, and I didn't want to have that.
Yeah, that was smart. All right, Zara, before you run off to class.
So freshman to high school transition, well, sorry, high school to freshman transition. Well, it was honestly, I'd say it was a very different, like it was a big jump for me because I am an international student, and coming in here, settling here, it took me at least one whole year to settle in the States because obviously everything's different, communication with people, everything. So what I would suggest for every incoming freshman to do is that make sure that you are involved in a lot of organizations. Become a part of those organizations because you will feel lonely, but organizations is the best way to connect with more people, make friends, and at the same time, there are also employers coming in the organization so you can network with them. And once you join these organizations, there would be students in there that have already probably taken those courses. And you can ask help, and they can help you out. So they'll become your friends and your mentors. That's how I coped with my freshman semester. So do not feel lonely. There's so much going on campus. There's so much stuff, like activities happening, events happening. Just make sure that you're involved in them and don't go to classes and stay in your dorm room or apartment room. Become more involved. And it's also nice that when you go into your classes, you see a familiar face from these organizations. So definitely become more involved. So I will be leaving because I have a class in about 5 minutes. It was nice answering these questions and chatting. I'd say also, guys, please do not skip classes or miss classes. I know this is a challenging time. Online classes, you're like, oh, it's recorded, I'm going to listen to it later. But trust me, things start piling up and it becomes really overwhelming towards the end. So try not to skip your classes and just make sure that you have this particular routine or schedule that you follow, because then it becomes really hard. I've been through it.
Great, Zara. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us before you head off to class. Really appreciate it. All right, Yuan, what did you do to cope with the transition from high school to being a college freshman?
For me, transition to college was really hard for me at first. Freshman year, most people say freshman year is an easy one, but for me, it was the hardest one so far in all my 4 years. And one of those reasons is that I had a hard time paying attention in class as well as doing well in class. So what I did freshman year was that I used a lot of on-campus resources like the Idea Center, the Writing Center, as well as the math clinic, physics clinic, and chemistry clinics. All these resources that helped me to tutor more in class. I have help outside of class. Also went to a lot of professors' office hours, and I did all this just because I had trouble understanding content and doing the homeworks. And they were really helpful. Actually, they were really helpful. And also, in addition to what Zara said, was that don't skip your classes and never have the idea of making up for a C or even a D later on with like multiple A's, because one of the things we often say in our orientation is that it's really hard to make up for a C, and oftentimes you want to do really well in your freshman year or sophomore year, because often those classes those 1,000, 2,000 level courses are easier than your 3,000 levels and your senior electives. And when you get a good grades in those first 2 years, you have a good cushion once you reach your junior and senior year, where you reach those higher classes. And often students start struggling in those. And if you get a not so good grade in those classes, your grades won't hurt as much. Yeah, just don't skip classes. And yeah, it is really hard to make up for C on your GPA.
Absolutely. So I know this was answered in the live Q&A, but so that we can get it on recording. Here's a question. Are there any coding groups or activities that will take place at UTA? And Ishrat, I know you answered that. And if you wouldn't mind like verbalizing how you answered that question, that would be awesome. Really appreciate it.
So just to clarify for myself, when we're asked questions in the Q&A, are we supposed to answer?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So there's Moby. This is one that I'm a part of. And so they host, well, back pre-COVID days, every other Friday, I believe, they would host like a project. Like we would design an app or do something every Friday night. And like the president and like, you know, the officers would take you through it and say, you know, this is how you do it. And yeah, it would just be like really cool things. Like you could make a web development app and things like that, or you can make like a fun game and you kind of learn the ins and outs and how to do it. And I think this is like super great because this club really allowed me to see, because I took a couple of coding classes and they were difficult and like it was very conceptual, and I didn't like, I'm a big believer in you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so I could talk the talk in terms of the lingo, like, oh, you know, this is C++, this is what you do. But like in terms of like actually doing it myself, this club like actually gave me the confidence to say, okay, well, you know, I can design an app, I can design a game or things like that. And so I really enjoyed it. The only downfall is, yeah, it is Friday nights, usually from 6 to 8. And so hopefully they'll do something on Microsoft Teams in which they keep doing what they're doing, because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that all of the clubs and organizations are really being encouraged to do things online, right? Because, you know, social distancing and all of that. So there's also another group called Game Developers Club. And thank you, Yuan, for posting the link to how to find out about these clubs and organizations. That's super awesome. And this is a perfect time to get involved. Doing something outside of the classroom, because we know if you do something outside of the classroom, whether it's game development or coding or a pre-professional organization or a sports organization, students who are involved like that tend to be much more successful on campus than students who are not involved in anything. It makes you feel part of the community. You have your network of friends, people with the similar interests, so that becomes super, super exciting and will help you be a successful student on a college campus. So I want to go back to a couple of questions because I know we still have some time. If you can remember back, what were the big differences between high school physics and college level physics? And this time we're going to go the other way. Yuan, you're going to go first, and then Ishrat.
I think the biggest difference between high school level and college level physics is actually the application, applying of calculus. Really, because in college, especially some of the college level physics, like here, general technical physics 1 and 2, you will have to learn calc 1 and 2 before you take those courses. Because back then, all the equations in high school, they were simplified, boiled down to like a algebraic expression, which I mean, you can use them, but they're perfectly fine. It's just that they were not as accurate if you use calculus, and some of the concepts you wouldn't be able to like totally grasp it if you just use algebraic expressions. Whereas if you understood velocity, acceleration, all that as the change in speed, all that with the derivatives, and which you can use integrals to go back, and how do you convert units from different dimensions, and you can mess around with that, is really, I think, the essence of college level physics, which just makes you realize how useful physics can be and how it could be so much more when you bring those into your engineering courses.
Great. That was a great explanation of like a good difference. Ishrat, if you can remember back to those days what would you like to share with us?
So yeah, just like, what Yuan said, like in high school physics, I took AP physics, and it seemed very straightforward. You wouldn't use calculus, and you would use the algebra and stuff, and it was very simple, straightforward, and you would get like the easy problems, like, oh, if a car was driving. But then college physics hits, and after you take calculus, you go into it, and then it's like, oh, a car is driving on a slippery condition, and everything occurs. There's like an oil slick and a dinosaur in the back. What's the friction force or something? It's just, it expands so much more, and it makes you think a lot more critically, and makes you actually really think about the concepts. Because, I mean, to be honest, in high school, I just memorized the equations, and I took, since the AP test, for the multiple choice, because I knew I was going to have to repeat physics again in college, and so I knew enough about the AP test to where I could do well on it by using the answers and knowing my formulas really well. But then actually in college physics, I had to learn the concepts and actually understand the concepts and utilize those concepts, because it's more than knowing the formulas. You can know all the formulas in the world, but unless you can actually, like think about it and say, okay, this is why this is, because I had a professor who made us write out our every step, or else he assumed that we didn't know and we were looking off of someone else's paper. And so, because he wanted us to justify everything, and I think that really helped me, like, make that connection between, okay, here's the concept, here's this problem, this is how I'm going to apply the concept, and this is how, I'm going to find the friction force, or, things like that.
Interesting. So you both mentioned, like doing AP or not doing AP. So even if you took an AP class in high school, would you recommend like taking the first semester of physics at the university campus? I mean, was that helpful? I mean, Ishrat, you kind of mentioned that first, because I know I get this question a lot. So I can get credit or not for AP. Would you take the first semester class again?
So for my English and my history classes, I definitely would, because it helped free up a lot of my time so that I could get a dual major. But as far as like the science classes go, I would still take the AP classes. They really helped me, get introduced to the topic and learn, like for biology, like the Krebs, because I am pre-med, and so like for biology, like the Krebs cycle and things like that, and chemistry, like it helped, I think, introduce me to what I was gonna encounter in the future. And okay, you're gonna have to go through this, do this, and it kind of also showed me like my weak points and what I could work on before I took the class. And so yeah, I would definitely recommend taking AP classes, but for the sciences, I personally did not take my credit because I knew that I would have to repeat it over again, because med schools don't accept AP credit.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's super, super helpful. So here's another question I want to ask you. How did you adapt to the differences between high school and college with regard to the importance of exams and projects versus homework? Okay, do you understand the question? Nod. Okay. You want to tackle that first?
Okay, I think the biggest difference that back in high school, I could just study the night before and still get an A on test. That's the biggest difference between high school exams and college level exams. I tried doing that stuff in my freshman year, second semester, did not end up well. Well, I didn't almost fail. I got a C on my Calc 2 test, but that was Calc 2. But still, don't do that. In high school, the content, like if you think about it, the content in high school is like the one course is like stretches out to 2 semesters, but in college, all the courses, all the materials, same length, fits into 1 semester.
Right.
And it's worse if you take it over summer or winter, because it fits in like 2 months or 1 month. So, and a lot of the materials, there are a lot of materials for you to read and comprehend, especially in these engineering courses, is there's not a reading. Actually, there's not a reading involved, but you will need to understand the concept completely before you actually do a homework or exam. Well, I mean, sure, you can go and check or have someone else help you to do it. But when there's a midterm or final coming, the test is only going to be like 5 or 6 questions. And if you understand the concept, yeah, you're going to get it. But if you don't, there's no way you can just like study a night before and just just randomly write something down and hopefully the professor will give you something. That doesn't really happen here. And how I do it in college is that I just listen in class. Really, you just go to class, try to listen in class. No matter how much you put down on your calendar, do whatsoever, your homeworks, your projects. Most important thing is to listen in class, because usually the professors teach this course, most likely they're doing research in this area, and they know this stuff like from inside and out. And if you just sit there and pay attention, listen to what we're talking about, and do the examples, do the homework without getting any help, and if you got any questions, ask professors, seek out for help from your professors or your peers. And then surely by the time the exam comes, you will be pretty much ready for the exams. And that's what the biggest tip I find to be most helpful after 3 years over here.
Yeah, awesome. Ishrat, what would you like to add?
So yeah, you definitely can't cram. I did the cramming once for a test and it was horrible, and I was panicking the entire night. I did well on the test, and I mean in the class I got an A, but it was a horrible thing to do to myself. And I remember I would chug all these like Red Bulls. But also, I had my freshman level biology class. The syllabus said we had 2 tests, and that was it. 50% was our midterm, 50% was our final, and whatever you scored. And so that really made me see, because in high school, like my teachers in high school were very, very nice. And like, you know, when we would do poorly or something, they would let us remediate and like redo it, get more, you know. And so in college, they don't really do that. Like in college, they have no mercy. Like if you fail your test, well, my professor, I remember distinctly said to this one student, I think who did poorly, he's like, okay, well, I guess I'll see you in my class next year. I teach it Monday, Wednesday, Friday again. And so that's something that really opened my eyes. Like, you know, 2 tests could determine your entire grade for a class. And so that made me really hunker down. And as far as the projects went, you know, same thing, because a project is almost sometimes, in terms of weight, a project is as much worth as a midterm as anything else. And so going back, I would just write down the dates and I would start working on everything a little bit early. Like for the midterm, I would study maybe 2 hours. And so just so that before the night of the test, I could relax, you know, just review everything and like just reassure myself that, hey, you know, I got all this, I studied. And so, you know, that hard work will pay off. Because that cramming, yeah, that is something I learned the hard way as well. So just keeping on top of everything, I would just say, because, you know, professors are very difficult. And I mean, they want to give you a good grade, but at the same time, they want you to earn it as well. And also for electrical engineering, we do not have multiple choice exams. Everything you had to write out your answer and you had to explain. And so in high school, everything was like multiple choice, and I was smart enough to where I could manipulate the answers in the multiple choice, and I could see, okay, this is the answer. But with with college, with my EE, like my circuits class, I was not able to do that. So
yeah. Well, people have different expectations and different ways of, you know, testing what you've learned and what you may still need to learn when you're in college. But I just wanted to clarify that, you know, we know in high school there is homework. So obviously there's still homework at the university, right? There are assignments that you have to turn in. It's not just projects and exams, but there might be, you know, papers or other descriptives or you know, thought processes after doing a lab or watching a lab, you know, a thought paper that you might have to turn in, right? So there is still that component of homework. Just, yes?
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes, like for my physics class, he didn't give us homework per se. He said, I'm just advising you these problems would help, you know, for the midterm.
Got it.
Guess what? They were similar problems. Like they would just be made a little bit more difficult. But I mean, if you did the problems, if you thoroughly understood the concept, you would be able to do homework problems. But
right.
Yeah, doing like the recommended problems that your professor, whatever your professor says, oh, this will help in class, go do that. Like a lot of the professors, like, because, you know, a lot of them are also research professors. And so every year they're not going to write a different test. And so sometimes, you know, like they'll use similar concepts from previous year's tests. And that's something like for my circuits class, like my professor would do a lot. He would give you a similar problem, but he would just change up the circuit and put the battery in a weird way, or put, you know, the capacitor in a weird way. And you're like, oh, okay, well, you know, And so just doing the homework and doing everything that they recommend is really beneficial and will help in the long term, because professors don't say things to just say, you know.
Right. You got to be listening, right? So Yuan, this isn't really a question, but if you could just explain to me the importance of learning how to talk to adults/professors, right? If you could just kind of touch on that for a second, I think our audience would really appreciate that.
Oh, I love talking to my professors. Ever since start of freshman year, there was my Calc 1 professor didn't like me, but I still talked to him because I already had trouble with a lot of homeworks, and I would go in and talk to him. So he's like, oh man, like I don't really understand how when you turn the limit to infinity, how this thing equals to 1. Can you explain that to me like one more time, please? After he explained like 2 times in class, and ended up solving a lot of problems for me, especially in Calc 1 homework. And I already just talked to him like a student. Like I would bring a question from class, from lecture to his office hours, just ask him. And it was just, I was kind of talking to him like I was still in high school talking with my teacher. And I mean, it worked out fine. And then when I got to the sophomore year, when I got into some of my engineering courses, I started talking more to my civil engineering professors. And I was actually working with this professor, he's a structural engineering professor, and I talked to him about how I was pretty interested in like bridges and how his class basically just made me think about engineering all the time. It was a class called Mechanics Materials, and basically what it is that it studies the mechanics of different materials like concrete and wood, how a force would, potentially break and fracture, just break the material. And after that class, it freaking like changed my mind, where it's like whenever I see a bridge going on and if there's a car going over it, I would think that, well, how would the force of the car impact that bridge? Like, would the concrete bend over, and how many more impacts could it take in the next like couple of decades? And before I really realized, I was like, wait, what am I thinking right now? Like, that's what I thought were the summer, because there were a lot of construction going on. Every time I see one, I just think about like the engineering behind it. And I was like, wow, you know what? That class really changed my mind. And I was still talking to him on a regular basis. It was like, hey man, your class really kind of changed my mind. And when I got to this other course called Dynamics, I was talking to my other professor about I was just talking about, okay, so this dynamics is pretty interesting. And a lot of professors here, especially engineering professors, you will see that they're mostly like just like us. They're just like engineering students like us. Most of the time they're kind of shy, and they're kind of shy if you talk to them in class. But as soon as you ask them something related to the class or related to research, they will literally they would start talking to y'all nonstop. Like they would just pour out all the stuff they got for research, how interesting it is, what they're gonna do, how much funding he got, and what's his next project. And that's how I basically got involved with doing research with one of my professors. And actually, next Tuesday and next Wednesday, right after Labor Day weekend, we're going to the DFW airport to inspect the pavement on the runways, and we're going over there from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Yeah, yeah. It's just that a lot of times when I talk to my professors, I just talk about my classes and like talk about future career choices. And there was this one professor I used to go there over winter, just last winter, when we're still working at the college. Like every once in a while, like in their lunch break, I would just go up to 4th floor and Netterman Hall and just talk to him, like, cause he's there chilling, and I just go there, talk to him, and say, hey, how's it going? Do you like, yeah, like, are you still teaching this class next semester? It's okay, cause I liked your geotechnical engineering class, so I'll go in there and just talk to him. And
That's awesome.
It's not that hard. Yeah, just talk to them like you would talk with your friends, respectfully. And most of the professors really like talking to students too, who are interested in their major.
Great, awesome. Ishrat, would you like to add to that?
No, I mean, Yuan did summarize it up really well. Talking to your professor, like just in general, it does make a difference. I think I got a couple of the A's that I did because I went to office hours and talked to my professor, and kind of showed them, hey, I'm really trying. And I think that really makes a difference, especially like, when you ask for letters of recommendation or, when you're applying to jobs and things like that. Your professor, because one of my professors actually works at UT Southwestern. And so I told him like my future plans of hopefully going to med school. And then he brought up the subject that he's a adjunct professor there. And and so I asked him like, if there's ever any opportunities there. And so that's a great way to like network. And because it's a lot about like networking, and it's getting the job you want may be a question of who you know. And then actually when you get the interview, it's what you know.
Right.
Who you know.
That's true. So in a couple of minutes, we're going to put up some tips on the screen, and then a slide with some contact information so that you know how to get a hold of us after this presentation ends. So this is a really good question, and I think it goes back to one of the first questions we asked is, I realize that there are a lot of events that are going on and upcoming in the future, but I'm having a hard time tracking and managing multiple things. Do you have any suggestions on ways to manage a whole bunch of things coming at you at the same time?
I would definitely get like a big calendar and just write it down, like one of those calendars you can put down on your desk. And I would just write everything down in like different colored pens, because as pointed before, I'm a very visual learner, and just seeing everything really helps me and just lets me see, okay, this is how my day is gonna go. Like, and so that's the best thing that I've done. And also, or you can get like we also do this at our house. We get a big whiteboard, and like in different colored markers, we put like everything that's due, like this week, the important things in red, and then, go on and give various other tasks to the different colors. So that's what I would recommend doing. That's how I learned, but.
Yeah. Yuan, how would you handle a whole bunch of stuff coming at you at once?
Oh man, I did have that coming this week. Whenever I open my Outlook counter, it's literally full. Yeah, one thing is good to put on Outlook because it automatically reminds you 15 minutes or 30 minutes before. You can set it whenever you want to. And I like the Ishrat's idea of having a calendar at desk. Also, you can get one of those where you can just like put it on the wall, just pin it down on your wall. And that's what we used to have in our office, where we just have it's one of those big ones where you can write with the expo marker and just
like
write out. Yeah, like a little whiteboard, but it's like a calendar. Yeah, you just write it on there and just erase it, change the month every month. And it works out pretty well because every time you set your desk, you just look at it. There's no way you miss it every day.
Right. Yeah, it is important. I know that on my Outlook calendar, I make sure that that's updated all the time so that when I get requests to do presentations or to meet with families or to talk to professors, I know that I'm not going to double up on the same time frame. I won't double schedule myself or things like that. So I think that kind of stuff is like really important to be able to do. Sometimes I'll color coordinate things. So anything that is like what I call a must, a meeting with the dean, a meeting with enrollment management, that is a must thing that I have to do. And then I try to schedule everything else that requests are coming in for or events I want to go to in like maybe a different color. It's like, ooh, if I can, this is something that I really want to be able to do. So we have here some tips for success. I really like the first one. You really have to believe in yourself and your ability to achieve successfully. Right? So I just want to ask Yuan, and I'll kind of go back and forth between you guys. So Yuan, what do you do to believe in yourself?
I oftentimes when I think that I can't make through a class or something, I just think back to how I got in here, how far I have came. Like I've been through high school. I didn't drop out of high school. I didn't fail out of high school, and I applied for UTA. I successfully got in here, made through Calc 1, 2, and 3, differential equations, and linear algebra. And like right now, I'm sitting right here. I got all the prereqs. I got everything I need to be successful in this class. Only thing matters is whether I pay attention in this class and whether I should do all these problems correctly or not. And that's how usually I believe myself. And I mean, really, from my past experience, it is possible to get like A's in all the courses here at UTA.
Mhm.
There's no professors trying to like make your life miserable. Not that any of I know of. It's like there's no professors trying to just make you fail. Like
Right,
they might not give out curves because that's just how they are.
right.
But there's always like I always seen people who got A's in the hardest classes, and it is possible to do. And it's not something that it's not a excuse for you to go and it's like, oh, I'm just gonna skip out on this homework, or I'm just not gonna go to class because I'm not getting A anyways. Yeah, I know like UTA doesn't do like A plus, like A minus, B plus, B
Right.
minus, so 80 and 89 is the same, but still let's try to just shoot for the best, shoot for the uh like like one of the past ambassadors, Jesse used to say that shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you will land among the stars.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. And I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind too. So we've already talked about, going to class and being prepared for class. Go ahead and do the reading beforehand so that you're not trying to catch up and not understanding what's happening in the lecture. That's super, super important. Identifying what learning style suits you. We've kind of touched on that. So definitely keep that in mind. To be successful, ask questions when you don't understand. Asking questions is absolutely encouraged both in the classroom and during office hours. So Ishrat, I want you to talk about working together, teaching and learning from each other, and also learning from your mistakes. Maybe you can give us an example of something that you did that kind of encompassed that entire concept.
Yeah, for sure. So I also have a biology degree from UT Arlington, and then I switched to electrical engineering after I got it. And making that transition was super hard, and I had to work, like, I went to a lot of study groups. I went to a lot of, at UTA, we have this thing called SI, Supplemental Instructions, and I went to a lot of SI study groups. And it showed me, everybody sees things differently, and just the way I might think about something, someone else might think of it in another way, and it might help me more. And so just doing, like, working together in the study groups, it really helped me, like, see things in a different manner and understand, like, with my calculus study group, like, this girl, I remember she showed me like a trick on how to like simplify this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have known, this saves me so much time. And so just, like, working with your other students, and also there have been studies that have shown that if you teach someone something, you actually understand it better.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a lot of things. I remember my friend and I, for calculus, we would both do the homework, and then we would just, UTA library has like the big whiteboards. We would just go to the whiteboards and we would work it. And then she would tell me how she worked it. I would tell her how I worked it. And then we would just, like, and that really helped because it allowed us to, like, be better and like learn the concepts a little bit more. And it also just, showed us like the little tricks that we could use on our midterm, because, our midterms are timed as compared to like high school, where teachers would give you like, oh yeah, just come in during lunch, you can finish it up. But when that hour and 30 minutes is up, your paper is due, and and so that really helped. And also learning from your mistakes. I think mistakes are the best things in life, because once you make a mistake, you know better and you're not going to do it again.
You learn from it. Mistakes can be very positive, and you go, oh yeah, well, maybe if I'd done it a little bit differently this time, or maybe if I'd looked at it from a different angle. Mistakes are not failures. Those are actual positive learning experiences. And it may take a while to get used to that concept, but even someone my age, I still learn from my mistakes, and it's actually a growth pattern, which is really good. We all know that time is finite. You're not going to get that time back, and not procrastinating, as I think all of the ambassadors have mentioned, is a really important part about being successful as a student, either in high school or at the university, because it just piles up on you and you'll just like freak out if there's too much. So trying to keep up with everything is super important. Using the resources available. Yuan, you did a really good job of explaining some of those resources, but maybe you could also explain what the ideas endeavor is all about.
Did you mean the Idea Center?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Idea Center is a free it's a free tutoring service for UTA students. I think it's free for the first 6 hours or so,
Mhm.
but I think in most times it's free to freshman students who are taking some of the history courses or some of the basic core classes. And it's actually really great. I had a friend who worked there. They wear orange polos. They're like, if you see them, you know it's them. Like, they're wearing orange polos. They're around. They're usually the ones who already taken that class and they did really well in it, and they basically know what you should know about in the class to help you be successful. And I say if you have time to go in for those, I think you can go in for those on UTA Library. Just go to the UTA Library's website and you can reserve sessions on the Idea Center with that. And besides that, you can also go to the I don't well since we're off campus now, but usually before COVID times when there are actually a lot of people on campus, there's chemistry clinics, physics clinics, as well as math clinics. And these clinics are usually full of, they have professors in there as well as students who have taken that class and did really well in them. And they're always there to help you to do, they're not there to do your homework, but they will tell you what steps you should take to do your homework.
Yeah, kind of give you that pathway to be able to be successful, right? So the last point is, joining a club to help make friends and network with employers and people who have your similar interests. We're really going to talk about extracurriculars and clubs and organizations next week at this time. So we hope you join us for that. But Ishrat, if you could give me an example of a club or organization that really helped you achieve your goals, that would be super helpful right now.
Yeah, I was in IEEE, which is a club for electrical engineers, and we had a room to ourselves in Netterman Hall, and just like there were so many people there who were always willing to help. To be very honest, I think they are the reason I graduated with my electrical engineering degree, because that degree is one of the hardest degrees I think that's offered on our campus. And there were some days that I was like, well, I have a biology degree. I can be happy with that. But it's just, there were just so many people in IEEE that were encouraging, that were always willing to help and explain things. And they were always, there to listen if you had a bad day or like a test didn't go your way. So I think that if I didn't have that club, I would have probably switched my degree to like mechanical or another type of engineering. But having that club, it showed that, I made the right choice. Electrical is for me. It is hard, but it is challenging and it is definitely doable.
Great. So if we could have our contact slide, I know we have like 1 minute left. That would be really helpful so that you out there can take a photo of this. These are ways to get a hold of us. Again, I'm Lynn. I'm the top name there. Our engineering ambassadors hold office hours from 9 to 5. You can set up an appointment with them if you want by emailing beanengineer@uta.edu. And you can also join their office hours. These are Teams links that they monitor every single day. We've got at least one ambassador in the office, virtual or physically, to be able to help you with any questions you may have. But thank you all so much for showing up today. We really appreciate it. We hope you learned something, and we hope that you'll join us next week when we talk about extracurricular activities and clubs and organizations. So again, thank you. Have a lovely afternoon and a wonderful long weekend ahead. Bye.